Hey man, there are few things after a breakup that hit harder than watching someone you loved appear completely fine without you. You're still trying to understand what happened, still waking up with that strange heaviness in your chest, still catching yourself thinking about conversations you wish had gone differently, and somehow she's already smiling in pictures, going out, meeting new people, maybe even dating someone else. And naturally, your mind reaches the most painful conclusion. She must never have cared about me the way I cared about her, because how else could somebody spend months or years beside you and then seemingly switch everything off overnight? But brother, what you see after a breakup and what someone is actually processing internally can be two completely different things. Speed doesn't always mean healing, silence doesn't always mean peace, and a new person doesn't automatically mean the old relationship became meaningless. The first thing you need to understand is that breakups rarely begin on the exact day somebody says it's over. Sometimes one person emotionally starts leaving weeks or even months earlier. Maybe she was questioning the relationship privately. Maybe she stopped imagining the same future. Maybe arguments that felt temporary to you were slowly changing how she saw the relationship. You were living inside the relationship, while she may already have been grieving parts of it internally. So when the final conversation arrives, you're experiencing day 1, while she may emotionally be on day 60. That's why the difference can look so brutal. You're trying to process a reality that was suddenly handed to you, while she may have spent weeks quietly preparing herself for it. That doesn't automatically make what she did fair, and it doesn't mean every breakup happens this way, but it explains why two people can leave the exact same relationship appearing to be in completely different emotional places. And this is where comparing recovery timelines becomes dangerous. You look at her and think, she's already going out while I can barely concentrate. Then you start treating her behavior as evidence that you're losing some invisible competition. So now you want to recover faster, you want better pictures, you want someone new beside you. You want her to see that you're doing great too. But heartbreak isn't a race. The person who dates first didn't necessarily heal first. The person who posts the happiest picture isn't necessarily the happiest person. And the person sitting alone, processing everything, isn't necessarily losing. Sometimes the person who looks slower is actually doing the deeper work, because instead of immediately covering the emptiness, they're allowing themselves to understand what happened, because people cope differently. One person isolates, another stays constantly busy. One goes to the gym 6 days a week, another travels, another spends every weekend surrounded by friends, because being alone makes the memories louder. And yes, some people immediately start dating. That new attention can temporarily feel incredible. After rejection, conflict, or emotional exhaustion, suddenly someone is interested in you again. Someone is complimenting you. Everything feels light because there isn't years of history attached to every conversation. Brother, that emotional contrast can feel like healing, even when it isn't. Sometimes you're not moving beyond the pain. You're simply standing somewhere the pain can't be heard as loudly. And eventually, when the noise disappears, whatever wasn't processed may still be waiting underneath. That's why you shouldn't automatically assume the new person replaced you. Human beings aren't interchangeable pieces. If you shared years with someone, another person doesn't download those memories and occupy your exact position because they went on 3 dates. What she has with someone new is something different. Maybe it becomes healthier, maybe it lasts, maybe it ends quickly. You don't know. And brother, trying to predict its failure will only keep you emotionally attached to a relationship you're no longer participating in. Men sometimes spend months watching the rebound, waiting for problems, secretly hoping she'll discover the grass wasn't greener and return. But notice what happened. Technically the relationship ended, yet your future is still waiting for her next decision. That's not moving forward. That's standing outside a closed door, hoping somebody eventually opens it again. And social media makes this 10 times worse because it gives you tiny pieces of information and lets your imagination create the rest. You see one picture of her laughing and your brain writes an entire story. She's happier without me. She never misses me. This guy gives her everything I couldn't. Brother, you don't know any of that. You saw a photograph. That's it. You remember your own relationship, right? There were probably days when both of you were frustrated with each other and still posted a perfectly normal picture. Online appearances never gave strangers complete access to what was happening between you. Why would they suddenly give you complete access to what's happening with her now? Stop using fragments as evidence for stories that only hurt you. And maybe she genuinely is happy. You need to make peace with that possibility too. This is where healing becomes uncomfortable, because it's much easier to tell yourself she's secretly miserable, that everything is a rebound, that eventually she'll realize losing you was the biggest mistake of her life. Maybe she will regret parts of it, maybe she won't. But brother, your recovery cannot depend on her future disappointment. If you need her next relationship to fail before you can feel valuable again, you've placed your self-worth inside circumstances you cannot control. The stronger position is accepting the hardest possibility. She may move forward and build a good life, and you're still going to build one too. Her happiness doesn't have to become evidence of your failure. Because two people can genuinely love each other and still reach a point where the relationship no longer works. That's something heartbreak initially refuses to accept. Your mind wants a clean explanation. Somebody must have been fake, somebody must have never cared, somebody must have won. But life isn't always that simple. Maybe there was real love and terrible communication. Maybe attraction existed, but your futures were incompatible. Maybe both people tried and still kept hurting each other. Maybe one person changed, maybe both did. The fact that someone eventually continues living doesn't erase what existed before. Brother, if every relationship had to last forever in order to have been genuine, then almost every meaningful relationship that ever ended would have to be considered fake. That's obviously not how human experience works, and here's the part your ego doesn't want to hear. How quickly she appears to recover isn't actually useful information for your next step. Suppose I could prove to you that she cries about you every night. What changes? The relationship is still over. Suppose I could prove she hasn't thought about you once in 3 months. What changes? The relationship is still over. You're searching for information because your mind believes enough information will give you control over the loss. But eventually, you have to stop studying her recovery and begin participating in your own. Sleep properly, train, work, reconnect with people you neglected, sit with the emotions when they appear instead of immediately escaping them. Rebuild the parts of your identity that became too dependent on being somebody's partner. That's where your attention actually produces something useful. So, before you torture yourself asking how she could move forward so quickly, understand that you may not even be looking at the complete timeline. Maybe she emotionally detached before the ending. Maybe staying busy is how she copes. Maybe the new attention is distracting her. Maybe she genuinely processed things differently and is ready for another chapter. You cannot know everything happening inside another person's mind, and eventually you have to stop needing to. The important question isn't, how did she move on so fast? It's, why am I allowing the speed of someone else's recovery to determine how I feel about myself? You loved. You lost something important. You're allowed to hurt, but don't turn your pain into evidence that you're weaker simply because someone else appears further ahead. Healing isn't measured by who finds another person first. It's measured by the day you finally realize you no longer need to know what she's doing in order to feel okay about what you're doing next. And there's another possibility that hurts to consider. Sometimes the person who ends the relationship experiences relief before they experience grief. That doesn't mean they hated you. It doesn't mean the relationship meant nothing. Imagine somebody spending months uncertain about whether they should stay or leave. Every morning, they're thinking about the relationship. Every disagreement becomes another piece of evidence. They're carrying guilt because they know the other person still wants things to work. Then eventually they make the decision they've been postponing, and suddenly the uncertainty disappears. For the first time in months, there's no decision left to make. That can create relief. And from your side, relief can look like happiness about losing you. But those aren't necessarily the same thing. Sometimes people initially feel lighter simply because the internal conflict ended. The sadness may arrive later, once the freedom stops feeling new and the permanence of what was lost becomes more real. That's why the first few weeks after separation can tell you surprisingly little about where someone will emotionally end up. Human beings don't process loss in neat chronological order. You might feel destroyed immediately and gradually become stronger. She might feel energized initially and encounter sadness later. Someone else might feel both in the same afternoon. Brother, grief doesn't follow a schedule. That's why trying to predict someone's emotional future based on their behavior 2 weeks after the breakup is almost pointless. She went out Saturday? That doesn't tell you what she felt Sunday morning. She downloaded a dating app? That doesn't tell you whether she's emotionally ready for another relationship. She hasn't contacted you? That doesn't prove you've never crossed her mind. You're taking observable behavior and trying to use it as a window into thoughts you don't have access to. And the more you do that, the more trapped you become. You start studying everything. Who followed whom? Why did she suddenly start posting more? Why did she delete that picture? Why is she listening to that song? Why did her friend view your story? Brother, now your breakup has turned into detective work. Every tiny digital signal becomes evidence in a case your mind is desperate to solve. And the cruel part is that no answer ever satisfies you. If she looks sad, you think maybe she wants you back. If she looks happy, you feel replaced. If she posts nothing, you wonder what she's hiding. There is no version of monitoring her that gives you lasting peace, because monitoring itself keeps your attention emotionally attached. At some point, you have to stop collecting clues about a life you're no longer responsible for. And yes, that may mean muting her, maybe unfollowing her, maybe removing the shortcuts that allow you to check what she's doing every time loneliness hits. Not because you're trying to make some dramatic statement, not because you want her to notice and wonder why you disappeared. You do it because your brain cannot heal from something you're voluntarily reopening 15 times a day. Think about it, brother. Every time you check, you're giving yourself another opportunity to discover something you weren't emotionally prepared to see. Maybe it's a harmless dinner picture, and your imagination turns the man sitting across from her into her new boyfriend. Now your entire night is ruined because of a story you created from one image. Protecting your attention isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the first boundary recovery requires. And if there is another man already, don't immediately turn him into your opponent. This is where wounded pride can make you irrational. You start comparing everything. Is he taller, richer, better looking, more successful? Did she leave because he had something you didn't? Brother, you're reducing an entire relationship to a competition between two resumes. Human attraction doesn't work that cleanly. People connect for complicated reasons. Timing, personality, chemistry, emotional state, proximity, shared experiences. Somebody choosing another person doesn't mathematically prove that person is superior to you. You've probably met women in your own life who are objectively attractive and still weren't right for you. Romantic choice isn't a universal ranking system. Stop treating another man's presence as a scoreboard displaying your worth. Because if you don't, comparison will slowly destroy the confidence heartbreak already damaged. You'll start improving yourself entirely in response to him. He has a better body, now you're training, because you need to beat him. He earns more, now your career becomes revenge. He drives something expensive, suddenly your possessions become part of an imaginary competition he may not even know exists. Brother, self-improvement built on pain can get you moving, but eventually you need a better reason to continue. Build your body because you want strength. Build your career because you want freedom. Improve your social life because isolation isn't good for you. If everything you build is secretly designed to make your ex regret leaving, then even your success still revolves around her. And here's another thing men rarely admit. Sometimes what hurts isn't even losing the relationship anymore. It's feeling replaceable. That's the deeper wound. You remember everything you did together, all those conversations, all the moments where you thought, nobody knows her the way I do. Then suddenly another person appears, and your ego asks, was I really that easy to replace? But brother, somebody entering her life doesn't erase the years that existed before them. People aren't deleted when relationships end. Your chapter happened. Whatever was genuine remains part of both of your histories, but history doesn't create permanent ownership over someone's future. That's the painful transition you have to accept. You can have mattered deeply to someone and still no longer be the person walking beside them. And accepting that doesn't make you weak. It actually requires more strength than constructing some fantasy where she secretly belongs to you forever. People change direction. Relationships end. Someone you once spoke to every day can eventually become someone you know almost nothing about. That's one of the strangest parts of adulthood. Brother, fighting that reality doesn't preserve the relationship, it only extends your suffering. The goal isn't convincing yourself she was meaningless. That's another form of denial. Maybe she mattered enormously. Maybe the relationship changed your life. You can honor that and still let it end. Some chapters become valuable precisely because they taught you something you carry into the chapters that follow. And this is why you shouldn't rush into another relationship simply because she did. That's one of the easiest traps after heartbreak. You see her dating, and suddenly being single feels humiliating. So you start looking for somebody immediately, not because you're genuinely ready to connect, but because you want proof that you're desirable too. Maybe you even want your ex to see it. Brother, Think about the woman you're bringing into that situation. She deserves more than being used as evidence in an argument with someone from your past. And you deserve more than building another relationship while mentally checking whether your ex noticed. Take whatever time you actually need. There is no prize for being photographed with someone new first. Because eventually, brother, the question you need to answer isn't why she seemed capable of continuing so quickly. The question is why her timeline became the standard against which you're judging yours. Maybe she had a head start emotionally. Maybe she distracts herself differently. Maybe she genuinely became ready faster. None of those possibilities tell you how long you should need. Your job isn't matching her speed. Your job is making sure that when you eventually move forward, you're actually moving forward, not carrying an unresolved relationship underneath a new one. Let her timeline belong to her. Let her choices belong to her. You focus on rebuilding until one day you realize something has changed. You haven't checked her profile, you haven't wondered who she's talking to, and you haven't needed evidence that she misses you. Not because you finally discovered the truth about how quickly she moved on, but because you finally stopped needing that truth in order to move on yourself. And there's something else happening underneath all of this that you probably haven't considered. Sometimes you're not grieving only the person, you are grieving the future you attach to them. That's why seeing her with someone else can hurt far more than simply seeing her happy. Your mind had already written scenes that never happened. Maybe you imagined the house, the trips, the birthdays 5 years from now. Maybe you pictured growing older together without consciously realizing how deeply that future had become part of your identity. Then the relationship ends, and suddenly you're not losing only what existed yesterday, you're losing everything you expected tomorrow to contain. And when another man appears, it can feel like he's stepping into a future that belonged to you. But brother, that future never actually existed. It was a possibility, not a possession. Accepting that distinction is painful, but it's also the beginning of releasing something your mind keeps trying to reclaim. And that's why heartbreak can feel strangely similar to withdrawal. Your entire routine was built around another person. Good morning messages, calls after work, weekend plans, little jokes, certain restaurants, certain songs, even the way you used your phone was connected to her. Then suddenly all those patterns disappear at once. Your brain still expects the notification. Something funny happens, and your first instinct is to send it to her. You reach for your phone before remembering that you're not that person in her life anymore. Brother, those moments don't necessarily mean she's your soulmate or that ending the relationship was a mistake. Sometimes your nervous system is simply adjusting to the disappearance of a deeply established habit, and habits don't vanish the moment logic tells you they're over. Meanwhile, if she emotionally prepared for the breakup earlier, she may have already begun changing those habits before you even realized what was happening. Maybe she stopped calling as much. Maybe she started leaning more heavily on friends. Maybe she became comfortable spending weekends without you. Maybe the emotional distance you interpreted as a temporary phase was actually her gradually separating her daily life from the relationship. So when the ending finally became official, many of the routines you're suddenly losing had already weakened for her. Again, that doesn't automatically make her malicious. It simply means you may have entered the same breakup from two completely different starting points. And that's why looking at her afterward and asking, why isn't she struggling like I am, may be comparing your beginning to a process she started much earlier. But don't use that explanation to torture yourself by rewriting the final months of the relationship. This happens too. Once you hear that someone may emotionally detach before leaving, suddenly you're analyzing everything. Was she already done when we went on that vacation? Did she mean it when she said she loved me that night? Was every happy moment fake? Be careful, human emotions aren't that clean. Someone can be uncertain about a relationship and still have genuine affection. Someone can consider leaving and still enjoy moments with you. Someone can love parts of what you share while questioning whether the relationship should continue. You don't need to turn the entire past into a lie just because the ending eventually arrived. Reality is often messier than the simple explanations heartbreak wants. And if she did handle the ending badly, you're allowed to acknowledge that too. Maybe she wasn't honest about where she was emotionally. Maybe she kept reassuring you while privately knowing she wanted out. Maybe she crossed boundaries before the relationship officially ended. Understanding why somebody moved quickly doesn't mean excusing everything they did. Brother, healing doesn't require you to rewrite harmful behavior into something acceptable. It requires you to see what happened clearly enough that anger eventually stops controlling you. You can say, That wasn't fair to me, without spending the next 3 years waiting for her to admit it. Accountability would feel satisfying, but your recovery cannot require cooperation from the person who hurt you, because sometimes the apology never comes. That's another reality men struggle with. You imagine that one day she'll understand exactly what happened, call you, explain everything, and finally give you the closure you deserve. Maybe that happens, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe she remembers the relationship differently. Maybe she genuinely believes she did the right thing. Maybe she's uncomfortable facing certain parts of what happened. Brother, if your peace requires another person to eventually agree with your interpretation, you've given them permanent authority over your healing. Closure isn't always a conversation. Sometimes closure is looking at the information you already have and deciding that it's enough to continue living. And that's especially important if another relationship appears quickly after yours. Your mind will desperately want an explanation. Was he there before? Did she leave because of him? Was I being compared to him? Sometimes those questions are legitimate, particularly if there was dishonesty, but once you've learned whatever facts are reasonably available, there comes a point where digging deeper only creates new images for your mind to replay. Brother, you don't need to know every conversation they had. You don't need to know where their first date happened. You don't need to know what she told him about you. Information has diminishing returns. At first, it can create clarity. Eventually, it becomes self-inflicted pain, disguised as investigation. And suppose the new relationship lasts. That's another possibility you have to become strong enough to accept. Men often comfort themselves by saying, "It's obviously a rebound. Give it 3 months. Maybe it is." But what happens emotionally if 3 months becomes 6, 6 becomes 12? Now you're watching their anniversary while still waiting for a prediction to come true. Brother, don't build your recovery around the failure of somebody else's relationship. Maybe they work, maybe they don't. Neither outcome determines what your relationship meant or what you're capable of building in the future. Her finding compatibility somewhere else doesn't prove you were defective. Sometimes two decent people simply weren't right for each other. And if it fails quickly, be careful with that too. Your ego may immediately celebrate. See, I knew it. She made a mistake, but her new relationship ending doesn't automatically mean your old one should restart. Those are separate questions. Maybe she realizes things about herself. Maybe she misses you. Maybe she reaches out. You still have to remember why your relationship ended. Brother, don't let the failure of her next chapter suddenly make your previous chapter healthier than it actually was. Nostalgia combined with validation is powerful. The moment you feel chosen again, you can forget months of problems in a single evening. If reconciliation ever becomes a real possibility, judge it through patterns, accountability, compatibility, and actual change, not the satisfaction of finally feeling wanted again. And that's where you begin taking your power back, brother. Not by becoming colder, not by replacing her faster, and not by proving that you can attract somebody better. You take it back when her choices stop defining the story you tell about yourself. She moved quickly? That's information about her timeline, not your worth. She found somebody else? That's part of her future, not evidence that yours disappeared. She seems happier? Let her be happy. Your life doesn't become smaller because hers continues. The moment you stop looking sideways and start looking forward, heartbreak changes shape. It becomes less about what she's doing and more about what you're becoming. And eventually you understand that the goal was never to catch up with her. It was to reach a place where you no longer cared who appeared to be ahead. And once you stop treating her new life like evidence against your value, another uncomfortable realization begins to surface. Maybe you were so focused on being replaced that you never asked what the breakup was trying to teach you. Pain naturally turns your attention outward. Why did she do this? Why did she change? Why did she choose that? Those questions can matter, but eventually you need another set of questions. What did you ignore because you wanted the relationship to work? Where did you communicate poorly? Which boundaries did you abandon because you were afraid of losing her? Were you choosing the person who actually stood in front of you, or were you attached to who you believed she could become? Brother, reflection isn't about blaming yourself for everything. It's about making sure you don't walk through pain, this expensive, and leave without taking the lesson with you. If heartbreak changes nothing about the way you choose, communicate, and understand yourself, then suffering taught you far less than it could have. And maybe one of those lessons is that you made the relationship too central to your identity. This happens quietly. At first, you have your own friends, routines, goals, hobbies, and plans. Then gradually everything becomes we. Your weekends revolve around the relationship. Your social life merges with hers. Your future plans include her automatically. Maybe you even stop doing things you once loved because maintaining the relationship consumes more and more of your attention. Then she leaves, and suddenly you're not only asking, "Who am I without her?" You're realizing you stopped answering that question long before the breakup. Brother, that's why rebuilding can feel so empty initially. You're not simply removing one person, you're reconstructing parts of yourself that were neglected while the relationship became your primary source of meaning. Meanwhile, she may appear less lost because she maintained more of those separate pieces. Maybe she still had her friendships, maybe she remained socially active, maybe she had routines that didn't depend on you. So when the relationship disappeared, the rest of her structure remained standing. That doesn't mean she cared less. It may simply mean her life had more independent supports underneath it. And brother, that's actually something worth learning rather than resenting. A healthy relationship shouldn't require either person to erase their individuality. Love should connect two lives, not consume both of them until neither person knows how to function alone. Your next relationship should become part of a meaningful life, not the replacement for one. And that's why this period alone can become incredibly valuable if you don't immediately rush to escape it. For the first time in a long time, nobody else's preferences need to shape your day. You can ask what you actually want again. What kind of routine makes you feel strong? What work have you been postponing? Which friendships disappeared while you were absorbed in the relationship? What places do you want to visit? What version of yourself existed before everything became about keeping somebody else happy? Brother, solitude initially feels empty because you're accustomed to constant emotional input, but eventually that empty space becomes freedom. You begin filling it deliberately, instead of waiting for another person to fill it for you. And when that starts happening, the obsession with her timeline naturally weakens, not because you're forcing yourself to stop caring, but because your attention finally has somewhere better to go. You have something you're building, you have people you're reconnecting with. Your mornings have structure again, you're sleeping better, maybe your body changes, maybe your work improves, maybe you simply notice that an entire afternoon passed without wondering what she was doing. That's how recovery often happens, brother. Not through one dramatic moment where you suddenly declare yourself healed, but through hundreds of ordinary moments where the past slowly stops being the most interesting thing happening in your life. Then, one day, you may accidentally hear something about her and notice your reaction has changed. Maybe a friend mentions that she's still dating the same person. Months earlier, that information would have destroyed your entire evening. Now you feel something for 10 seconds, maybe curiosity, maybe a slight ache, and then your mind returns to whatever you were doing. Brother, pay attention to moments like that. That's progress. Healing isn't necessarily reaching a point where somebody who mattered becomes emotionally meaningless. It's reaching a point where information about them no longer controls the direction of your day. You remember without spiraling. You acknowledge without investigating. The memory exists, but it no longer has authority. And that's when you start understanding that moving forward isn't really about forgetting her. Men sometimes set impossible goals for themselves. I don't want to think about her ever again. Brother, if you spent years with someone, you're probably going to remember them occasionally. That's normal. You may hear a song 10 years from now and suddenly remember a road trip. You may visit a city and remember a restaurant. Memory doesn't mean you're secretly still trapped. The question is what you do after the memory appears. Do you immediately check her profile and reopen the entire story? Or can you smile at what was good, acknowledge what was painful, and continue with your day? Freedom isn't memory loss, it's memory without compulsion. And eventually, you may even become grateful for parts of the relationship without wanting it back. That's one of the strangest stages of recovery. Earlier, everything feels contaminated by the ending. You think about the good memories and immediately feel anger because of what happened later. But with enough distance, you can separate those things. Maybe she introduced you to something you still love. Maybe you traveled somewhere together that changed you. Maybe the relationship taught you how deeply you're capable of caring. Maybe the breakup forced you to develop boundaries you should have had years earlier. Brother, something doesn't have to last forever to contribute something meaningful to your life. You can appreciate the lesson without asking to repeat the class. And this is also when forgiveness begins making more sense. Not necessarily reconciliation, but forgiveness. People misunderstand forgiveness and think it means saying what happened was acceptable. It doesn't. Sometimes forgiveness simply means deciding you're tired of carrying the emotional debt. Maybe she hurt you. Maybe you hurt each other, maybe there are things you'll never completely understand. But brother, resentment creates a strange bond too. You think hatred means you've detached, yet you're still allowing the person to occupy enormous emotional space inside you. Every time their name appears, anger returns. Every new relationship gets compared to what happened. Eventually, releasing resentment isn't something you do for the person who hurt you. You do it because you don't want somebody from your past continuing to influence the man you're becoming. And that's when the original question starts sounding completely different, brother. Why did she move forward so quickly? Months earlier, you asked because you were searching for proof that you mattered. You wanted reassurance that she was secretly struggling too. You wanted some explanation that would make the ending hurt less. But eventually you understand that her speed never determined the depth of your relationship, and it certainly never determined your value. People detach differently, people grieve differently, people distract themselves differently. Some relationships begin shortly after others end and still become meaningful. Others collapse immediately. None of that changes your responsibility now. Your chapter with her ended. And the moment you stop reading ahead in her story, trying to discover whether she regrets turning the page, brother, you finally have both hands free to start writing your own. And there's another reason watching her move forward can hurt so much. You're seeing the finished result without seeing everything that happened inside her before it. You see the new pictures, the new routines, maybe the new man, and it looks like she simply walked from one life into another without carrying any emotional weight. But human beings are rarely that simple. Some people process relationships while they're still inside them. Some suppress everything until months later. Some genuinely detach faster, and some look perfectly fine, because looking fine is easier than explaining what they actually feel. The problem is that you're trying to measure an internal process using external evidence. You can't. You can only see behavior, and the more confidently you pretend you know what that behavior means, the more likely you are to create a story that hurts you unnecessarily. Maybe she struggled, maybe she didn't. Eventually, brother, both possibilities have to become acceptable, because neither one changes what you need to do next. Because think about what you're really searching for when you ask whether she misses you. Most of the time, you're not looking for information, you're looking for relief. You want confirmation that the relationship mattered enough to hurt her too. If somebody could tell you, she thinks about you every night, part of you would immediately feel better. Why? Nothing about your circumstances changed. You're still separated. The only thing that changed is your ego received reassurance that you weren't forgotten. Brother, that's an important thing to notice. Sometimes what we call love after a breakup is partly wounded significance. We don't necessarily want the relationship back exactly as it was. We want proof that losing us had consequences, and until you separate those two desires, you can spend months believing you still want someone, when what you actually want is validation from them. That's also why the fantasy of her coming back can become addictive. You imagine the message arriving at midnight. You imagine her saying nobody understood her the way you did. You imagine her admitting she made a mistake. And in that fantasy, something inside you finally relaxes because the rejection has been reversed. You've been chosen again. But brother, notice how little that fantasy usually focuses on what happens 6 months after the reunion. It focuses on the moment of return, because that moment repairs your ego. It doesn't ask whether communication would improve, whether trust could actually be rebuilt, or whether the same incompatibilities would reappear. Sometimes men don't want their ex back as much as they want the emotional victory of being wanted back. Those are two very different things. And this becomes especially dangerous when she actually does reach out. Maybe months pass, and suddenly you see her name on your phone. Your heart starts racing before you even open the message. Hey, I was thinking about you. Brother, that sentence can undo months of clarity if you haven't understood your own emotions. Don't immediately build a future around it. Someone thinking about you doesn't automatically mean they want the relationship again. Missing you doesn't mean the problem's disappeared. Loneliness can create messages, nostalgia can create messages, curiosity can create messages, genuine regret can create them too. You don't have to become suspicious of everything, just don't give one message more meaning than it actually contains. Let conversation reveal intention. Let behavior reveal whether anything truly changed. And if she tells you she misses you, you're allowed to admit that you miss her too. You don't have to play some ridiculous game where you pretend you forgot her name just to look powerful. Emotional honesty doesn't make you weak. You can say, yeah, I've missed parts of what we had too, while still understanding that missing something isn't enough reason to rebuild it. Brother, maturity means being capable of holding two truths at once. You can love somebody and recognize that being together wasn't healthy. You can remember beautiful moments and still know the ending happened for legitimate reasons. You can forgive someone without reopening the relationship. You can wish them well without needing them close. Life becomes easier when you stop forcing complicated emotions into simple categories like love or hate. Because eventually you may realize that the opposite of love isn't necessarily anger. Sometimes it's neutrality. Early after the breakup, everything she does affects you. She posts something, you react. She disappears, you wonder why. Someone mentions her, you immediately become alert. Even anger keeps her emotionally central because your nervous system is still responding to her presence. But months later, something changes. Her name comes up and you don't feel that sudden drop in your stomach. You don't need to ask follow-up questions. You don't secretly hope the conversation reveals she's unhappy. Brother, that's a much deeper form of detachment than pretending you hate her. Hatred says, you still have enormous emotional power over me, only now the emotion is negative. Peace says, I don't need anything from this story anymore. And that's when you become capable of looking at the relationship more accurately. While you're hurting, memory tends to become extreme. One day she was perfect and you lost the greatest woman you'll ever meet. The next day she was terrible and you convince yourself nothing between you was genuine. Neither extreme is usually useful. With enough distance, you start seeing a normal human being. She had qualities you loved and flaws that caused problems. You had strengths and weaknesses too. Some moments were beautiful, others were unhealthy. Brother, that's progress because you're no longer forcing the past to support whatever emotion you're feeling today. You can remember the relationship as it actually was, instead of constantly rewriting it as either paradise or disaster. And from that clearer place, you can finally ask what kind of relationship you want next, without simply asking for the opposite of your ex. That's another trap. If she was emotionally distant, suddenly you want someone extremely affectionate. If she was spontaneous, now you want somebody predictable. If she loved going out, you decide the next woman needs to stay home. Brother, don't build your future entirely as a reaction to your past. Learn from what happened, absolutely. Identify what was genuinely incompatible, but don't let one person define every preference you carry forward. Otherwise, she's still influencing your next relationship without even being there. Your standard should come from understanding yourself, not from constructing a human opposite of somebody who hurt you. And when somebody new eventually enters your life, resist comparing every detail. Maybe she texts differently, maybe affection looks different, maybe the chemistry develops slower. Your mind may immediately compare it to the intensity you experienced before. Be careful, brother. Familiar doesn't automatically mean better. Sometimes what you experienced as incredible chemistry in your previous relationship was partly uncertainty, emotional highs and lows, or simply the excitement of that particular period in your life. A healthier connection may feel different because you're different now. Give new people the opportunity to become themselves instead of forcing them to compete with a memory. Nobody can build something genuine with you if they're unknowingly being measured against someone who exists mostly as edited highlights inside your head. And eventually, you'll understand the part that seems impossible to believe. When the breakup is fresh, her moving forward quickly may end up becoming one of the things that forces you to truly release her. At first, it feels cruel because you wanted more time. You wanted evidence that she was struggling too. But reality doesn't always give us the ending that protects our ego. Sometimes it closes the door so clearly that continuing to stand in front of it becomes impossible to justify. And maybe that's what finally makes you turn around. You stop studying her new life. You stop asking whether she replaced you. You stop waiting for regret. You start building days that don't include her at all. Then months later, you look back and realize the thing you thought would destroy you actually forced you to discover that your identity, your future, and your capacity to love were never buried inside that relationship. She moved forward in her way, you moved forward in yours. And brother, the moment you're genuinely at peace with both of those truths is the moment the breakup finally stops owning you. And there's another stage of recovery nobody really prepares you for, the moment you realize you're no longer waiting. In the beginning, even when you tell yourself you're moving forward, some small part of you remains emotionally positioned at the door. You're working, training, seeing friends, rebuilding your routine, but somewhere underneath all of that is a quiet thought. maybe eventually she'll come back. And because that possibility exists, you never completely release the relationship. You leave a little space open for her. Then enough time passes and something shifts. You stop imagining the message. You stop rehearsing what you would say if she called. You stop wondering whether the next notification could be her. And brother, that's when healing becomes real. Not when you stop caring about what happened, but when your future finally stops requiring a particular ending from your past. Because waiting can disguise itself as hope. You tell yourself you're simply keeping an open mind. Maybe she needs time. Maybe this new relationship will teach her something. Maybe she'll realize what she lost. And technically, all of those things are possible. But brother, possibility is dangerous when you organize your life around it. Almost anything could happen. She could return next month. She could never return. She could return after you've completely changed. You can't build your life around whichever possibility protects your feelings the most. Eventually, you have to make decisions using what is true today. Today, the relationship is over. Today, your life belongs to you. If reality changes tomorrow, you can respond tomorrow. But don't sacrifice today's peace to a future that exists only in your imagination. And maybe that's exactly what she did differently. Maybe while you were holding tightly to what the relationship had been, she accepted what it had become sooner. That doesn't automatically mean she was stronger or colder. Sometimes people simply reach acceptance at different times. Brother, acceptance creates movement because you're no longer spending all your energy arguing with reality. Think about how exhausting denial is. You replay conversations trying to find a sentence that could have changed everything. You imagine alternative endings. You negotiate with memories. Meanwhile, reality remains exactly where you left it. Acceptance doesn't mean liking what happened. It means finally saying, I wish this were different, but it isn't. That sentence hurts, but it also gives your energy somewhere new to go. And once that energy returns to you, you start noticing how much of it heartbreak had been consuming. You weren't only thinking about her when you deliberately thought about her. She was running quietly in the background of your mind all day. You're working, but part of your brain is analyzing the breakup. You're at the gym, but you're imagining what she'd think if she saw your progress. You're with friends, but you're wondering what she's doing tonight. Brother, emotional attachment can become like an application running constantly in the background, draining the battery even when you aren't actively using it. Recovery is when that process slowly shuts down. Suddenly you have mental space again, and you realize just how exhausted you've been. That's when you need to be careful not to immediately fill that space with another woman, simply because emptiness feels unfamiliar. There is something valuable about learning how to exist without constant romantic stimulation. No good morning message, no one asking where you are. No relationship drama to solve. At first, the quiet can feel uncomfortable because you've forgotten what to do with it. But brother, that quiet can become one of the most productive periods of your life. You begin hearing your own thoughts again. You rediscover what you want when nobody else's preferences are mixed into the answer, and the next time someone enters your life, you can choose them because they genuinely improve something already meaningful, not because you desperately needed somebody to silence the emptiness. And here's another thing that changes when you stop monitoring her. Your imagination loses access to the material it was using to hurt you. Every new picture used to create another story. Every new follower became another question. Every weekend she went out became another possibility. You were essentially feeding your mind incomplete information and then allowing insecurity to finish the story. Brother, that's why distance can be so powerful after separation. You don't need to know where she went Saturday night. You don't need to know whether she still talks to the new guy. You don't need updates from mutual friends. Every piece of information creates another branch your mind can climb. Eventually you realize ignorance isn't always weakness. Sometimes not knowing is exactly what allows you to stop caring. And eventually you begin recognizing how strange it was that you needed her to struggle in order to validate your importance. Think about that carefully. If she stayed single for a year, would that prove you were valuable? If she dated somebody after 2 weeks, does that prove you weren't? Of course not. Yet heartbreak makes those things feel connected. Brother, your value cannot logically rise or fall according to how another adult manages their romantic life after you separate. She may have loved you deeply and still moved quickly. She may have been unhappy for months and felt ready immediately. She may have made a terrible decision. She may have made the right decision for herself. None of those scenarios change your character, your potential, your skills, your future, or what you bring into the next relationship. And this is where comparison finally begins, losing its grip. Maybe the new man has qualities you don't have. Good, you have qualities he doesn't have too. Human beings aren't products arranged from best to worst on one universal shelf. Brother, there will always be someone richer than you, taller than you, funnier than you, more attractive than you, more successful than you. If your confidence requires being objectively superior to every man a woman could potentially meet, you will never feel secure. The goal isn't becoming unbeatable competition, it's becoming secure enough in who you are that another man's existence doesn't feel like evidence against yours. The woman who's compatible with you isn't choosing you because you defeated every other man on earth. She's choosing the life and connection that exists specifically between the two of you. And when you understand that, your next relationship becomes healthier because you stop entering it with the desperate need to prevent history from repeating. You don't monitor her constantly because your previous partner left. You don't panic every time she wants time alone. You don't assume every male friend represents betrayal. You don't make a new woman repeatedly prove she isn't your ex. Brother, that's one of the responsibilities heartbreak gives you. You have every right to become wiser, more observant, and more selective, but you don't have to become suspicious of everyone. Otherwise, the person who hurt you continues damaging relationships they aren't even part of. Healing means keeping the wisdom while eventually putting down the armor, and that's the point where her moving forward stops looking like something that happened to you and starts looking like something that simply happened after the relationship ended. That distinction is huge. She didn't necessarily begin another chapter as a statement about your worth. Her life continued because that's what lives do, and now yours has to continue too. Not competitively, not so she sees you winning. Not because you need a better looking partner or a bigger bank account to prove the breakup benefited you. You move because remaining psychologically frozen would mean allowing one ending to consume years that still belong to you. Eventually, the greatest proof that you've recovered won't be that she regrets leaving. It won't be that your next woman is better. It will be that one ordinary day you realize you're genuinely excited about your future, and whether your ex ever sees that future doesn't matter anymore.